the new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The empty seat. Who was actually just that, an empty chair in your office because you couldn't find someone to fill it. So it just sat there costing you money with all its fancy ergonomic features. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can make it easy to fill that seat with the right candidate, with nearly 60% of businesses finding someone to interview in the first week alone. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Welcome back to The Case for with Chris Cox, that pretend procedural, which is set not in the court of last resort, but rather the court of the Disney World Resort. This is the podcast where theme park expert Len Testa and mind reader Chris Cox will regularly debate some of the more trivial aspects of vacationing in Orlando, what makes visiting here a complete joy or an absolute misery. I'm the less than honorable James Robespierre Hill. I'll be presiding over today's proceedings, and after hearing Chris and Len's arguments, I will then render my verdict. All verdicts are final, until, of course, they're not, which means we'd love to have you, the listener, also weigh in with your thoughts on these not-so-weighty matters.
And, Your Honor, I'd like to point out that we're now 2 for 2. The courtroom, for some mysterious reason, actually looks like a courtroom. I always enjoy having a table and a chair where I can sit down right where I'm looking to go to work, as opposed to suddenly finding myself inside an ice arena or ringside at the dog show. Thank you, Your Honor.
Although, Mr. Hill is, Len, once again dressed up in another unusual outfit. Your Honor, what's going on? Who are you this time?
Isn't it obvious? I mean, look at my bland attire and my somewhat goofy expression. I'm supposed to be veteran character actor Judge Reinhold.
Oh, the guy who played Billy Rosewood in all those Beverly Hills Cop movies? Mm-hmm. He was really big in the 80s, right? I remember him in Fast Times at Ridgemont High and his magnum opus, of course, Stripes, which is, and I'm being serious, one of my all-time favorite movies. At one point, I actually knew the entire script.
Army training.
Army training, sir.
Yes.
What? It's like it's Moscow. It's Czechoslovakia. We zip in, we zip out.
Is it Ruthless People as well? It's like that was one of the first movies Bette Midler did for Disney. I'm sort of remembering this from that thing she did on the studio tour when it was back at MGM Studios.
Was it The Lottery?
The
Lottery
ticket? That was it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Bette was very early on in the Eisner era of Disney. But the first film that Mr. Reinhold did for Disney was a romantic comedy called Offbeat. It starred Judge as a librarian who worked at the New York Public Library, who, for reasons we don't need to get into here, winds up masquerading as a New York beat cop in order to win the heart of another police officer who, by the way, was played by also 1980s favorite Meg Tilly.
Offbeat. That was like super early in Michael Eisner's run at Walt Disney, right? Like late 84?
Well, yeah. Now Michael comes in the door at late '84, but again, and you're not wrong. I mean, Offbeat was one of the very first films he greenlit. The first film that he put in production when he arrived at Disney was Down and Out in Beverly Hills, and that one starred Bette Midler, Nick Nolte, Richard Dreyfuss. Mm-hmm. Now, where this gets interesting is Down and Out in Beverly Hills starts shooting on the Disney lot in Burbank in late May of '85, whereas Offbeat starts shooting in New York City just a week or so later in early June of that same year, '85.
So they're probably racing each other to get production done to see who would finish first, hoping that Eisner would then choose to send their film out first. So, the first big thing to represent the new regime at Disney.
I always thought it was Splash, but now that I think about it, it was Down and Out in Beverly Hills, right? Mm-hmm. It was late January of '86. And Jim, who was the director, producer there?
Paul Mazursky. And by the way, it did make a lot of money for the company, though kind of controversial. It was an
R-rated movie, yeah.
By the way, the first ever produced by Disney Studio, which is why Michael Eisner then got bombarded with all sorts of angry letters from people saying, Walt must be rolling over in his grave now.
Or if the conspiracy theorists are right, he'll be spinning around at the back of his fridge. Talking of letters, it's time for another edition of listener email episodes on this podcast where we share the letters that you've sent in and we pretend they're letters rather than digital communications and never mention it other than in this point where we break the fourth wall and then put it back up again. Thanks very much. Very good. So we've got loads of your comments for the case for. Should we have a look at some of them?
Absolutely. Which letter will we be sharing first?
Well, we did an episode all about what we would do if we were CEO. Had loads of things there. Transport issues becoming a big ticket idea. Len, have you got that message from Ryan? The first of all the Ryans.
We do actually. So so Ryan had mentioned that after having been stuck on the monorail and in the monorail station multiple times recently, including being trapped due to severe weather while sitting on the monorail itself. He's not sure that upgrading the monorail system would be enough. Ryan thinks that the Skyliners become a favorite mode of transportation as long as there isn't inclement weather, which is why Ryan thinks that adding a Skyliner to get to Disney Springs and Animal Kingdom would be pretty cool. And he says, however, at Magic Kingdom, I think they should consider eliminating the express monorail, and only have the monorail loop be going for those going to and from resorts. Then in addition to the ferry, have a Skyliner that goes directly between the Magic Kingdom and the TTC as an alternative. So wow, that would be 4 modes of transportation to get from the TTC to the Magic Kingdom. That is super interesting.
That's because one of your pitches as CEO was a new Skyliner, right? You worked out where it should go.
Right. And when we polled listeners on the Touring Plans forums, that was actually the proposal that got the most support, expanding the Skyliner to Disney Springs and Animal Kingdom. 58% of the folks who voted in that poll would have gone with that too.
Okay. One question, though, I'm thinking over the way that the Skyliner is set up in its original routing. Does it ever go over water for an extended period of time?
Yeah, the Hourglass Lake at Pop Century, you actually approach over the water, yeah.
Okay. Well, all right.
Do you remember, Jim, when they were right before they were rolling it out, they were actually testing boat rescues?
No. Oh,
they have a contraption, and honest to God, if you see it floating, the contraption is the right word for that. It looks like it's you would trust it if your life was in danger, but I don't know if it was something that you would trust on a normal day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Woof. Okay. Continuing on with the mail, we also have a note here from Jan Amelia. Who says cheaper than Skyliner is a waterway between Animal Kingdom Lodge and Animal Kingdom, especially if the boats will run late enough to provide supper business to Tiffin's Rainforest and whatever. Digging a trench is cheaper than pouring foundations, and buying boats is cheaper than buying a gondola system. And the boats could also fit the animal jungle theme. Will reimagined Dino Land be able to be open after dark, and will Pandora be able to be open after dark as well? And the final question: does Disney have the cast members to staff something like this?
Oh, I haven't thought about a boat between Animal Kingdom Lodge and Animal Kingdom. Mm-hmm. I'd always thought that like a walkway, it's half a mile. A walkway would be appropriate, but a boat, I mean, why not? You can do boats from Wilderness Lodge to the Magic Kingdom. Why not Animal Kingdom Lodge to Animal Kingdom?
Excellent.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Dave J got in touch. His point of view as a Walt Disney World guest, which he is once a year, says they'd want a volcano-themed coaster, which is one of your ideas, Len. A resort airline check-in, one of my ideas. Villain-themed breakfast, that's yours, Len. So that's 2 out of 3 for you, Len. Well done. You'll be the next CEO. He also says from his point of view as Walt Disney World CEO, and he'd like to remind us he is not that, he would go for the uncharged stuff. So he'd like to go for merch room delivery service, resort airline check-in for a fee, and a villains-themed breakfast. So I get 2 back there, so maybe he should be CEO. Actually, Magic Scott got in touch as well, and he said that he thinks Disney would see an increased revenue by having a merch delivery service without charging a dime for it. He can't be the only person who saw a merch item he wanted but didn't buy because he didn't want to lug it around all day.
Right. Well, toward that end, Lynn Salt also added that I deferred purchases while at the park in lieu of purchasing at Disney Springs, which was where I was meeting my transportation to the airport, and the items were not available at Disney Springs. So Disney lost out on these opportunities.
And Amy Wilk added, it's one of the reasons the gift shops are jammed with people at park closing. There are probably people who want something but change their mind about the purchase at park closing because the shops are crowded and the lines are too long and they don't want to wait in them. So yeah, you think that like Disney's leaving some money on the table here. I'm sure they've run the numbers, but man, it's got to be, their labor costs must be super high if that's the case, right?
Gotta be. So again, why then? If again, it's one of these things. It's kind of like the Disney Express. Why then? Something that the guest liked, the guest enjoyed. Why did they ultimately take it off the table? Was it really that labor intensive or that costly?
If I remember correctly, the delivery guarantee was that it would be there within 24 hours of your resort. So I wonder if there were too many issues with the items not showing up before the guests checked out, and then Disney or the guests having to arrange for shipping, which would then add additional labor and additional costs onto the top of running the system.
Now, for me, I guess I have been intrigued by what I have seen in the big stores at the individual theme parks over, say, the past 5 years. For example, the reconfiguring of checkout at the Emporium, or for that matter.
Oh, God, yeah, that place is vastly different than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, but it just, the whole notion of the way you enter that space and the way you're taken by the impulse items and, all that sort of thing. And then you finally arrive at the point where, sometimes there's 5 different, folks who work in registers and that sort of thing. I mean, clearly Disney wants to increase revenue.
Interestingly, looking at the poll on the Touring Plans forum that Jeff AZ has kindly put up for us, only 19% of people would support a merch delivery room service delivered again. 58%, the most people would vote for expanding the Skyliner from Disney Studios to Animal Kingdom. 47% want to bring back Disney's Magical Express. 32% would upgrade the monorail system. And then we've got Resort Airline check-in, 20%. Volcano-themed coaster, 19%, and they go down. The I Need a Pee Pass, which was my Lou Lane, only 8%, so sadly I'm not going to be CEO.
I'd say 8%. 8% is just a trickle of votes, but it does beat out my international APs are valid at domestic park. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, all right.
Now, worth noting here, folks, that we are recording this on March 20th, and just a day or so before this, Josh D'Amaro made his first appearance at a shareholders meeting. And did either of you get to watch that? Did you get to watch, Mr. D'Amaro's inaugural performance in front of shareholders?
I did. I listened to it while I was doing other things. I thought it went pretty well. The idea that
I did not hear him mention the Lou Lane.
Exactly. The idea that the Disney CEO gets asked questions about Journey into Imagination every year is hilarious to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it so much. It's my favorite trend.
Me too. I mean, it's like the CEO of Coca-Cola being asked about, the specific commercial performance of one polar bear,
As someone who very proudly wears their Figment hoodie and has a Figment oven glove at home, all things Figment, I am here for more Figment.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and I think Josh handled it pretty well. I thought too the discussion around revamping the DAS system was just the right balance of we understand everyone's needs. However, there are operational issues that people were exploiting or abusing last time. I thought that worked out pretty well, and I wasn't surprised that particular shareholder vote failed.
Understood.
One of the other things we discussed in the episode, which we got loads of feedback about, particularly on the Touring Plans forums, is the Lightning Lane episodes. We did 2 of them. There was a lot of Lightning Lane based chat.
Okay, NTEI wrote in to say, I would probably never buy Lightning Lane. I would feel guilty about spending that much money for a family of four when I could get the same results using my skills.
Yeah.
Gentlemen?
Well, the funny thing is that NTEI goes on to say that they did buy express passes for Epic Universe because it's their first trip and they want to do everything, which is how they get you, right? Like, I've said on the show before, when Hannah and I did a father-daughter trip over Thanksgiving at Disneyland, I sprung for the Premier Pass for one day because we had one full day in the park, and I wanted to do everything. And that's when the value proposition makes sense. Yeah.
And we just did that episode about me getting it for express passes for Universal as well. And actually, he went on to say that he worries it's a slippery slope as the planner for the family, and that he can't deny the ease of Lightning Lane Premier Pass or express passes. And they'd probably crack and buy Premier Pass if it offered multiple rides like Universal's Express does in Islands of Adventure or Universal Studios. But doesn't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Understood, but to double back to Len and his trip with Hannah to Disneyland and springing for that. Mr. Schul and I were just at Disneyland this past week doing a walk and talk. And again, this was March.
Yeah.
And, the day we were in the park, it was 99 degrees with
it's been hot.
50,000 people in the park at the exact same time. And it just, I have never experienced a Disney, park under those sorts of conditions. And, Chul and I, when we drove down to Anaheim, had all of these ambitions to do. We were going to do, a walkthrough of Disneyland and a walkthrough of DCA, and then we're going to tour all of the new stuff down at Downtown Disney. And we literally turned to each other after we visited Disneyland walkthrough, and we're done, right? We're done.
You're good, right? We're all good here. Yeah,
we're all good. Get to the car in the air conditioning. I mean, it just, I can't imagine standing in standard lines on a day like that. I would have actually traded Alice for Lightning Lane. It's like, here, take my child. Give me a way to move quickly here.
I do like there's one common theme in a bunch of the listener comments, and that is if you could buy Lightning Lane Premier Pass and then get re-rides on attractions, then it would be worth it. And I think that's a really interesting idea because realistically, how many times are you going to go on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train? I mean, 2 or 3? How many times are you realistically going to go on Guardians of the Galaxy? 2 or 3? Like, that seems like that's a fair thing. Unlimited re-rides for that price, that sounds fair to me.
I could get behind that.
I agree there, actually. Ginger Snaps 543222 said that she got the Lightning Lane Premier Pass because she didn't have to get up at the crack of dawn or deal with rope drop crowds or the transport system or all the entrances to the parks or run across the parks like a chicken with its head cut off, and didn't have to feel rushed, and mainly didn't have to look at their phone. That was priceless to them. Every park they walked in a giant circle doing what they want as they approached it, spent time with each other instead of on their screens after having a full night's rest. So to them, Premier Pass was worth it, and I sort of can totally see that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That was very, very noticeable, this most recent trip, both at Universal Hollywood and at Disneyland. And the number of folks who, walking by this giant, beautifully themed, Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift show building. Or more to the point, the cars are literally going through the park being tested, and people just aren't looking up from their phones. It's like, wow, what is it going to take to pull you out of your iPhone?
Yeah, and that was a common complaint that we got from people throughout all of the comments. The fact that in order to maximize Lightning Lane multipass, you've really got to be on your phone constantly. I mean, Chris, you've talked about this before when you were planning your trips for Epic Universe. The fact that you've got to check the website every day.
I feel like all the time. Yeah, I want to get off my phone as much as I can and see all the beautiful stuff that's been designed for me. In fact, B. Gotthard 728529 used Lightning Lane Premier Pass just once on their second trip, and they said it was fantastic, and they used it in Hollywood Studios, which I think we all agree was sort of the best place you could use Premier Pass alongside Magic Kingdom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the feelings around Lightning Lane are probably some of the most intense that we've seen from our listeners, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I think Chris has quite eloquently pointed out that, if you're traveling the distance and, you're trying to have a special time with your family, sometimes biting the bullet and actually paying that money so that you don't have to stand in a 2-hour plus long line, especially in 90-degree heat.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a very good point, actually, by Life with Jane, who hasn't run the numbers, but said that perhaps it might work out better to do a split staying a cheaper resort, but then utilize the Deluxe resort for extra evening hours at Magic Kingdom, and therefore not buy the Lightning Lane for Magic Kingdom, but use the extra evening hours instead.
Oh, that's super interesting. So, I mean, the least expensive Deluxes are typically Animal Kingdom Lodge and Wilderness Lodge because they've got the smallest rooms. So, yeah, if you can get that for like $400 a night, it's definitely cheaper than Lightning Lane Premier Pass. The lines are incredibly short during those couple of hours that you're in the park. I would say it depends on the park that you're at, though, and what you want to see, because if you're doing that at Epcot, the big obstacle to overcome during evening hours is the distance between attractions. Not quite the same problem at Hollywood Studios or at Magic Kingdom. But like if you wanted to go from Remy to Guardians, I mean, that's a 12-minute walk, right there, maybe 15 to 20, depending on how fast you're walking. And, over 2 hours, that's a considerable chunk of change. So yeah, it depends on the park. But I think for Magic Kingdom, it would definitely make sense. That's a good idea. Oh, you can also rent DVC points and do the same thing too. And that's even cheaper than the least expensive Disney Deluxe. So yeah, that's actually not a bad idea at all, Life with Jane.
So let's have a little look at the Touring Plans forums and see some of the poll results. 41% of people said that they would almost always buy Lightning Lane Multipass for every day. 25% of people would buy Lightning Lane Multipass the majority of the time. And then also, which attractions do people typically buy Lightning Lane Single Pass for? 70% for Guardians of the Galaxy, 45% for Tron, 44% for Rise of the Resistance, 39% for Flight of Passage, 7 Dwarfs Mine Train, 29%, and 19% of people rarely buy it. And interestingly, out of a load of votes, 69% on a different poll described their Lightning Lane Premier Pass usage as, I would probably never use Lightning Lane Premier Pass. 16% have used it on occasion. So it's, that was the big ticket item.
Wow. Okay. I'm really surprised by that. I mean, I'm not surprised by the Lightning Lane for Guardians of the Galaxy, because that seems to be the most popular of the Lightning Lanes. Flight of Passage, 56%. Don't disagree with that either. Rise of the Resistance, 40%, is really surprising to me, because that's the one that I would automatically say is the most useful. Super interesting there.
You got to wonder, though, reading into this stuff, though, how much of that is I wouldn't be willing to stand in that line again?
Yeah, that's true.
Rewritability.
Oh, that's a good point. If you sort this, Jim, by age of attraction, I think that explains that. Because Guardians is the newest. Actually, Rise is the next, so maybe not quite. And then Tron. Tron, 52%. Yeah, that does make sense. So Guardians, Tron, you get a little bit of Flight of Passage. But yeah, it's sort of like some combination of like newness and uniqueness of attraction. That makes sense.
Jeff AZ, our official poller, actually also did an additional poll for us about the strategy for Lightning Lane at each park, which had a few interesting results I wanted to share. So he asked people what they would do in each park. For Animal Kingdom, 56% of people buy Lightning Lane Single Pass for Flight of Passage, 51% buy Multipass, and 33% use Standby Only. At Epcot, 70% of people buy Single Pass for Guardians, 62% buy Multipass, 21% Standby Only. At Lightning Lane Multipass's usage at Hollywood Studios, 75% of people buy them. Single Pass for Rise, 40%, 21% Standby Only, it's about 20% each time for all of these. And at Magic Kingdom, 67% Multipass, 52% Single Pass for Tron, 32% Single Pass for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So out of all of those rides, it looks like the Guardians of the Galaxy is the one that most people buy Lightning Lanes for.
Okay, well, on that note, folks, we want to thank everyone who reached out in regard to the recent episodes of The Case for with Chris Cox and shared your thoughts. But we're now going to close the mailbag here on the podcast. Just a reminder, though, a full verdict won't be rendered on this podcast until you, the listener, weigh in. So please keep these emails and comments coming. Beyond that, want to thank our two would-be barristers, theme park expert Len Testa and master illusionist Chris Cox for, helping me wade through this week's pile of correspondence. And on that note, another session in these hallowed halls, the court of the Disney World Resort, has now come to a close. And on behalf of Mr. Cox and Mr. Testa, this is the less than honorable James Robespierre Hill. And I want to thank you for listening to The Case for with Chris Cox, and we three will be back soon.